I arrived home from dinner at my favorite downtown steakhouse to find 3 police cruisers in my driveway and 7 children ages 4 to 14 crying on my front porch. My phone buzzed with 17 missed calls from panicked relatives. Inside my living room, Detective Morrison showed me a handwritten note claiming I invited all my nieces and nephews for an impromptu sleepover weekend, while their parents attended a family emergency in another state. The problem, I never wrote that note, never made those calls, and had no idea why my brother Marcus would forge my signature. Standing in my own living room while Detective Morrison held up evidence bags, I felt like I was watching someone else's life implode. The fluorescent kitchen light cast harsh shadows across the children's tear-stained faces as they sat clustered together on my burgundy sofa, clutching backpacks and stuffed animals. "Mr. Phil, can you verify your whereabouts between 3 and 6 this evening?" Detective Morrison asked, his weathered hands flipping through a notepad filled with precise handwriting. "Romano's Steakhouse on 5th Street." I replied, my voice sounding foreign to my own ears. "I was having dinner with Jake Morrison from the accounting firm where I work. We discussed quarterly reports and the Peterson audit. Jake ordered the ribeye, I had the salmon special." Detective Morrison nodded, scribbling notes. "We'll need to verify that timeline. Meanwhile, take a look at this footage from your own security system." He pulled out a tablet, swiping to a video timestamp showing 3:27 in the afternoon. My blood turned cold as I watched my brother Marcus walking confidently up my front walkway, leading a parade of children carrying overnight bags. He bent down, retrieved my spare key from underneath the fake rock beside my azalea bush, and unlocked my front door like he owned the place. "Your brother told each family member a different story." The detective continued, his tone growing more serious. "Mrs. Diana Thompson believes you specifically requested her twins because you felt lonely after your recent divorce. Mr. Robert Chen was told you wanted to test your parenting skills before proposing to your girlfriend. Mrs. Patricia Williams, your mother, thought you were depressed and needed family time for emotional healing." My stomach lurched as I processed the elaborate deception. That's impossible. I never spoke to any of them about watching their kids. I've been working 60-hour weeks preparing for the Henderson Industries merger. Detective Morrison showed me another evidence bag containing my spare house key. "Your brother used this to gain entry. He also provided each family with what appeared to be text message conversations between you and him discussing sleeping arrangements, meal plans, and scheduled activities." Young Tommy, my 12-year-old nephew, looked up from the couch with red-rimmed eyes. "Uncle Phil Marcus showed us pictures of the fort you built in the basement and said you bought new video games for us to try." "I don't have a basement." I whispered, the reality of Marcus's lies hitting me like a physical blow. Detective Morrison continued reading from his notes. "Neighbors called emergency services when they heard children crying and noticed no adult supervision. Mrs. Henderson next door reported seeing the kids trying to climb through a window when they couldn't reach the doorbell. I walked to my kitchen, noticing immediately that my refrigerator had been emptied. The leftover Chinese takeout, the carton of orange juice, the sandwich meat I'd planned for tomorrow's lunch. Everything was gone. Empty pizza boxes filled my trash can, and I counted receipt fragments from 8 different delivery restaurants scattered across my granite countertop. He ordered food to multiple locations using my credit cards. I realized picking up a receipt from Tony's Pizza Palace. "Look at this timestamp, 4:45 this afternoon. I was still at the restaurant with Jake." Detective Morrison examined the receipts, photographing each one with his phone. "We found this folder hidden behind your couch," he said, producing a manila envelope thick with documents. Inside were photocopied forms bearing my forged signature, temporary guardianship papers for all 7 children, fake medical consent forms, and even fraudulent insurance documentation claiming I was responsible for their care during the weekend. "Mr. Phil," Detective Morrison said gravely, "your brother could be facing serious charges here. Identity theft, child endangerment, fraudulent use of credit cards, and forgery. We need to locate him immediately. I stared at the documents, recognizing Marcus's careful handwriting, attempting to mimic my signature style. He'd practiced enough to make it nearly convincing, but the letter P in my name curved differently than I actually wrote it. 8-year-old Emma, my niece, tugged on my shirt sleeve. Uncle Phil Marcus said you planned treasure hunts and movie marathons for us. He promised we'd have the best weekend ever because you missed us so much. My heart broke seeing the confusion and disappointment in her innocent brown eyes. These children had been excited for an adventure that never existed, manipulated by someone they trusted, and now they were traumatized and afraid. We're going to figure this out, I told her gently, kneeling down to her eye level. But first we need to call your parents and make sure everyone knows you're safe. Detective Morrison's radio crackled with static before a dispatcher's voice cut through. Unit 7, we've got reports of suspicious activity at the Riverside Storage Complex. Possible connection to your current investigation. The next 2 hours transformed my quiet suburban home into crisis management headquarters. Detective Morrison established command in my dining room while I began the heart-wrenching processes of calling each family member to explain the situation. My sister Diana answered on the first ring, her voice trembling with panic. Phil, thank God. Are Jacob and Jessica okay? I've been calling Marcus for hours, but his phone goes straight to voicemail. Diana, I need you to sit down. I said, choosing my words carefully. The twins are safe, but there's been a serious misunderstanding. I never invited them for a sleepover. Marcus forged documents and lied to everyone. Silence stretched across the phone line before Diana's voice returned sharp with disbelief. That's impossible. Marcus showed me text messages where you specifically asked for Jacob and Jessica because you felt isolated after Sarah moved out. He said you wanted to practice being around children again. I'm looking at security footage right now showing Marcus dropping them off while I was at dinner. I explained, my voice heavy with exhaustion. He used my spare key and somehow convinced everyone this was planned weeks ago. Diana's breathing became rapid and shallow. He had pictures, Phil. Photos of bunk beds you supposedly assembled and board games you bought specifically for them. He even knew that Jessica's been afraid of the dark lately and said you'd prepared a nightlight shaped like her favorite unicorn. My chest tightened as I realized the depth of Marcus's manipulation. He'd researched each child's preferences, gathered personal information about my divorce, and constructed elaborate lies tailored to convince each family member individually. Where are the twins now? Diana asked, her voice breaking. Safe in my living room with Detective Morrison and 6 other children, I replied. Diana, there are 7 kids here total. Marcus told different stories to everyone. Robert, my brother-in-law, arrived 20 minutes later with his wife Jennifer, both of them pale and shaken. Their 10-year-old son, Michael, ran to them sobbing, while their 6-year-old daughter, Claire, clung to a tattered, stuffed elephant. This makes no sense, Robert said, his usually calm demeanor cracking. Marcus presented a complete business plan for your new babysitting service. He said you were starting a weekend childcare program to help family members have date nights, and that you'd invested in specialized equipment and safety training. Jennifer wiped tears from her eyes. He showed us photos of the playroom you'd created, complete with educational toys, organized by age group. We were so impressed by how thoughtful and prepared you seemed. Detective Morrison looked up from his paperwork. Mr. Robert, did Marcus request any form of payment for this supposed service? Actually, yes, Robert admitted reluctantly. He said you were still setting up the business registration and asked if we could pay the first session fee directly to him to help cover initial supply costs. We gave him $150. My hands clenched into fists as another layer of Marcus's scheme revealed itself. He wasn't just manipulating emotions, he was stealing money while traumatizing children and destroying family trust. The front door opened as my elderly parents arrived, their faces etched with worry and confusion. Mom rushed to embrace the children while Dad approached me with uncharacteristic hesitancy. "Son, we're so sorry." Mom said her silver hair disheveled from rushing over. "Marcus told us you'd been struggling emotionally since the divorce, and that spending time with the grandchildren would help you heal. He said it was your idea and that you'd specifically asked for all of them together." Dad, normally reserved and measured in his speech, looked genuinely distressed. "He convinced us you were too proud to ask for help directly, but that you really needed family support right now. We should have called you first to confirm, but Marcus seemed so certain about the arrangements." 12-year-old Tommy, who'd been quietly listening to the adult conversations, suddenly stood up from the couch. His young face showed a maturity beyond his years as he struggled with an internal conflict. "I have something to tell everyone," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Marcus made me promise not to say anything, but I think I have to now." Detective Morrison immediately focused his attention on Tommy. "What did Marcus tell you, son?" Tommy's hands shook as he reached into his backpack and pulled out a crumpled $20 bill. "He gave me this money and told me to say that Uncle Phil had called me personally to invite everyone over. He said it was a surprise for the adults and that I was helping make everyone happy." The room fell completely silent except for the gentle hum of my air conditioning unit. Everyone stared at the money in Tommy's small hand, understanding that a child had been bribed to participate in this deception. Marcus also said something else. Tommy continued, tears beginning to flow down his cheeks. "He told me this might be the last time we'd all be together as a family, and he made me promise to give Grandma a letter after tonight if anything bad happened to him." Tommy reached into his backpack again and produced a sealed white envelope addressed to Grandma Patricia in Marcus's handwriting. Detective Morrison carefully took the envelope, examining it closely. "Tommy, did Marcus say anything specific about where he was going or what he planned to do tonight?" "He said he had to go away forever and that nobody would understand why," Tommy replied. "He seemed really sad and kept looking at his phone like he was waiting for something scary to happen." The envelope felt substantial in Detective Morrison's hands, suggesting multiple pages inside. Mom reached for it instinctively, but the detective shook his head. "Mrs. Williams, this could be evidence in a criminal investigation. We need to process it properly, but given the circumstances and the potential safety concerns, I think we should open it now with everyone present." As Detective Morrison carefully opened the envelope, my phone rang with an unknown number. Against my better judgment, I answered. "Phil?" Marcus's voice came through distorted and filled with static. "I'm sorry, brother. I never meant for it to go this far. By the time you hear this message, I'll be gone, and you won't have to worry about cleaning up my mistakes anymore." The line went dead before I could respond, leaving me staring at my phone in horror while Detective Morrison quickly contacted dispatch to trace the call. The letter Tommy had carried contained 3 pages of Marcus's handwriting, each word more devastating than the last. "I can't live with what I've become," Detective Morrison read aloud. "The gambling, the lies, the money I've stolen from people who trusted me. Phil deserves a better brother, and our family deserves better than the destruction I've brought into their lives. By the time you read this, I'll be at peace. And maybe you can all heal without me dragging you down." Mom collapsed into Dad's arms, sobbing uncontrollably as the reality of Marcus's mental state hit everyone at once. The children huddled together on the couch, not fully understanding the adult crisis unfolding around them, but sensing the gravity of the situation. Detective Morrison's radio erupted with urgent communication from dispatch. "All units, we've got a BOLO alert for Marcus Williams, last seen driving a blue 2019 Honda Civic toward the Riverside Bridge area. Possible suicide risk, approach with extreme caution." The bridge. I whispered, my blood running cold. 3 people had jumped from Riverside Bridge in the past 2 years, and it had become synonymous with tragedy in our community. Detective Morrison was already moving toward the door. "Mr. Phil, I need you to come with me. You know your brother better than anyone, and we might need you to talk him down." I looked back at the children and my parents, torn between staying to comfort my family and potentially saving Marcus's life despite everything he'd done. "Go," Jennifer said firmly. We'll take care of the kids and wait here. Just bring them home safely." The police cruiser's sirens wailed as we raced through downtown traffic toward the River District. Detective Morrison's radio provided constant updates from units converging on the bridge area. Unit 12 reporting, vehicle matching description found abandoned in the north parking area. No sign of the subject. Unit 15, we've got eyes on a male figure near the bridge's center span, requesting immediate backup and crisis negotiation team. As we approached the bridge, I could see Marcus's silhouette against the evening sky standing near the railing approximately 200 feet above the rushing water. My heart hammered against my ribs as Detective Morrison parked behind 3 other police vehicles. "Mr. Phil, I need you to stay back until we assess the situation," Detective Morrison instructed. "If we determine that your presence might help, we'll bring you forward, but right now we don't know his mental state." Through binoculars, I watched Marcus pacing back and forth along the bridge's walkway. He appeared to be talking on his phone, gesturing animatedly with his free hand. Something about his body language seemed wrong. Not like someone preparing to jump, but like someone engaged in an intense conversation or negotiation. Officer Sarah Martinez. The crisis negotiation specialist arrived within minutes and immediately began setting up communication equipment. "Has anyone been able to establish contact with the subject?" "He's been on his phone for the past 10 minutes, Detective Morrison reported. "We've tried calling his number, but he's not answering police calls." Officer Martinez adjusted her headset and started monitoring cellular traffic in the area. "I'm picking up an active call between the subject and another party. The conversation seems heated, possibly argumentative rather than suicidal." A chill ran down my spine as I realized Marcus might not be preparing to hurt himself. He might be meeting someone on the bridge. "Detective Morrison." I called out, "What if this isn't a suicide attempt? What if Marcus owes money to dangerous people and he's trying to pay them off?" Before Detective Morrison could respond, Officer Martinez's equipment crackled with intercepted audio from Marcus's phone call. "I have the money, Tony. $30,000, just like we agreed. But I need more time to get out of town before my family discovers what I've done." The voice that responded was gravelly and threatening. "Time's up, Marcus. You've had 6 months to make this right, and instead you've made everything worse. Meet me at the Bridge Center in 5 minutes, or your entire family becomes my problem." Detective Morrison immediately radioed for additional backup. "We've got a possible organized crime situation developing. Request immediate tactical support and surveillance units to monitor all bridge access points." My stomach dropped as I understood the true scope of Marcus's problems. This wasn't just about gambling debts or family manipulation. He'd gotten involved with people who threatened violence against innocent relatives. Officer Martinez continued monitoring the intercepted communications. "The subject is moving toward the bridge's center span. We're tracking a second individual approaching from the opposite direction." Through the binoculars, I could see a large man in a dark jacket walking purposefully toward Marcus. Even from this distance, his posture radiated menace and authority. "That must be Tony," I said, my voice tight with fear. Marcus mentioned owing money to someone, but I had no idea it was this serious. Detective Morrison coordinated with tactical units, positioning themselves at strategic points around the bridge. "Mr. Phil, did your brother ever mention specific amounts of money or details about his gambling debts?" "He asked my parents for $5,000 last month, but they refused because they suspected he had a gambling problem." I replied, watching the 2 figures converge near the bridge's center. I had no idea he owed $30,000 to someone like this. Officer Martinez's equipment picked up more conversation fragments. "You lost my money on horse races instead of making the payments we agreed on, Marcus. That makes you a thief and a liability. I can get you $60,000 by tomorrow." Marcus's voice came through desperate and pleading. "My brother has access to family accounts, and I've already set up the paperwork to transfer everything." My blood turned to ice as I realized Marcus had stolen my identity, not just to manipulate the family gathering, but to access financial accounts and create fake loan documents. "Detective Morrison," I said urgently. He's been forging my signature on documents. What if he's already stolen money from my accounts or applied for loans in my name? Before Detective Morrison could respond, the situation on the bridge escalated dramatically. The man presumed to be Tony grabbed Marcus by the shoulder and pushed him against the railing, their confrontation becoming physical. "All units move in now," Detective Morrison commanded. "We've got assault in progress and potential danger to civilian life." As police vehicles converged on both ends of the bridge, Officer Martinez's equipment captured Tony's final threat: "Your brother Phil is going to pay what you owe me one way or another. If you can't deliver the money, I'll collect it from him personally." The arrest happened fast, but the investigation revealed a conspiracy far more complex than anyone had imagined. Marcus sat in handcuffs in the back of a police cruiser, while Tony Castellano was being processed at the downtown precinct, and I found myself at the center of a financial crime investigation that stretched back months. Detective Morrison spread documents across a conference table at the police station, each piece of paper representing another layer of Marcus's deception. "Mr. Phil, I need you to look through these carefully and tell me what's authentic and what's forged." The first document made my hands shake: a loan application for $25,000 bearing my signature and personal information dated 3 months ago. According to the paperwork, I had requested the money for home renovations and provided my employment information at Henderson & Associates accounting firm. "I never applied for this loan," I said, examining the signature. Marcus practiced copying my handwriting, but look at how he dots the I in my middle name. I never do that. Detective Morrison photographed the document from multiple angles. "This loan was approved, and the money was deposited into an account we've traced back to your brother. The lending company believed they were dealing with you directly." Agent Sarah Chen from the FBI arrived as we worked through the evidence, bringing with her files that connected Marcus's activities to a broader pattern of financial fraud. Her professional demeanor carried an undertone of urgency that made the situation feel even more serious. "Mr. Williams," Agent Chen said, setting up a recording device, "your brother's case has revealed connections to an interstate financial crime network. We need to understand the full scope of identity theft he committed using your personal information." She opened a laptop and showed me screenshots of online accounts created in my name. These include credit card applications, personal loan requests, and even attempts to refinance a mortgage on property you don't own. Your brother created a comprehensive false identity package using your social security number, employment history, and banking information. My credit report, which Agent Chen pulled up on her screen, showed a nightmare of unauthorized activity. 7 new credit cards had been opened in my name over the past 4 months, each with maximum balances charged for cash advances. 3 personal loans totaling $42,000 showed active payments, and my credit score had plummeted from 750 to 430. "How is this possible?" I asked, staring at the financial destruction Marcus had caused. "How did he get access to all my personal information?" Detective Morrison consulted his notes. "We found evidence that your brother had been collecting your mail, photographing important documents when he visited your home, and even accessing your computer when you weren't around. He built a complete profile of your financial life over several months." Agent Chen added another disturbing dimension. "The lending companies he worked with are connected to Tony Castellano's operation. They deliberately target people with gambling problems, provide easy access to large amounts of money, and then use threats and intimidation to ensure payment. Your brother wasn't just a victim of this system. He became a recruiter." She showed me surveillance photos of Marcus at Gamblers Anonymous meetings, sitting in circles with other people struggling with addiction. "We believe Marcus was identifying vulnerable individuals at support group meetings and referring them to Tony's lending network in exchange for reduced pressure on his own debts." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. Marcus hadn't just stolen from family, he'd exploited other people trying to recover from the same addiction that destroyed his life. "There's more," Agent Chen continued, opening another file. Phone records show that Marcus provided Tony's organization with personal information about your family members. Your parents' retirement account details your sister's savings information, even your girlfriend's employment and address. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. My girlfriend of 18 months. Phil. I'm getting weird calls asking about loans you supposedly applied for. Someone claiming to be from First National Bank wants to verify employment information for your mortgage application. What's going on? I showed the text to Detective Morrison, who immediately added it to his evidence file. Mr. Phil, we need to contact Amanda and warn her that she might be targeted. Tony's organization doesn't just threaten the primary debtor. They go after anyone connected to them. Agent Chen's laptop chimed with an incoming message from her field office. She read silently for a moment, then looked up with a grave expression. We've just raided Tony Castellano's business locations in 3 states. The evidence we're finding suggests this organization was planning to escalate beyond financial intimidation. She turned the laptop screen toward me, showing photographs of surveillance equipment, fake identification documents, and detailed files on dozens of families. My family's folder was thick with photos of my parents' house, my workplace, Amanda's apartment building, and even the elementary school where my nieces and nephews attended classes. They weren't just collecting debts, Agent Chen explained. They were preparing for kidnapping operations targeting family members of people who couldn't pay. Your brother's debt had reached the level where Tony was planning to take physical action against your relatives. Detective Morrison leaned forward in his chair. Mr. Phil, based on this evidence, we believe Tony's people were planning to grab one of your family members within the next few days. The children being dropped at your house might have been reconnaissance. Marcus providing them with access to potential targets. The room felt like it was spinning as I processed the magnitude of the danger my family faced. Marcus hadn't just betrayed our trust or stolen money. He'd put innocent children and elderly parents in the crosshairs of organized criminals. What happens now? I asked, my voice barely functioning. Agent Chen closed her laptop and gathered her files. We're implementing immediate protection protocols for your entire family. Tony Castellano and his associates are facing federal charges for extortion, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit kidnapping. Your brother's cooperation will be essential for building the strongest possible case. She paused, studying my face carefully. Mr. Phil, I need you to understand something important. Your brother isn't just a victim of gambling addiction. He made deliberate choices to harm innocent people to protect himself. But his information about Tony's network could help us save dozens of other families from going through what you've experienced. Detective Morrison stood up, signaling that the evidence review was complete. We'll need you to work with victim services to begin recovering your stolen money and repairing your credit. The federal investigation should help expedite those processes, but it's going to take months to fully resolve everything. As we prepared to leave the conference room, Agent Chen handed me her card. Mr. Phil Tony's organization has been operating for years, destroying families and exploiting addiction for profit. Your brother's cooperation, combined with the evidence we've gathered, gives us the best chance we've ever had to shut them down permanently. 2 weeks later, I sat in a secure FBI field office downtown, surrounded by federal agents, financial crime specialists, and victim advocates who had become my unexpected allies in fighting back against the network that destroyed my family's sense of security. Agent Chen spread blueprints across a conference table, pointing to locations marked in red throughout the metropolitan area. Tony's operation runs through 4 primary businesses: a check cashing service, a payday loan company, a debt consolidation firm, and what appears to be a legitimate construction company that serves as their money laundering headquarters. Marcus had been transferred to federal custody, and his cooperation had already provided investigators with detailed information about the organization's structure. Sitting across from Agent Chen, I read transcripts of my brother's interviews, each page revealing more about how deeply he'd been embedded in their criminal network. Your brother documented everything, Agent Chen explained, showing me printed emails and text messages Marcus had saved. He kept records of every person he recruited from Gamblers Anonymous, every forged document he created, and every financial scheme he participated in. He thought this information would protect him if Tony ever turned against him. Detective Morrison, who had been promoted to liaison with the federal task force, added context that made Marcus's actions even more chilling. The recruitment at addiction support meetings was systematic. Marcus would identify people who were isolated from families struggling financially and desperate for quick solutions. Then he'd introduce them to Tony's lending services as a way to solve their immediate problems. Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a clinical psychologist specializing in gambling addiction, joined our planning meeting to help everyone understand the psychological manipulation involved. Addiction creates vulnerability that predators like Tony deliberately exploit. They provide temporary relief from financial pressure, which feels like salvation to someone in crisis, but then use the resulting debt to control their victims completely. Agent Chen opened a laptop showing a map with dozens of red pins scattered across 3 states. Based on your brother's information, we've identified 67 families currently trapped in Tony's debt system. Some of them have been paying inflated interest for over 2 years, and several are facing the same escalation threats your family experienced. The scope of the damage was overwhelming. Families losing their homes, children traumatized by threatening phone calls, elderly people having their retirement savings stolen through forged documents, all connected to the same network that Marcus had helped expand. Mr. Phil, Agent Chen said, we want you to participate in a controlled operation that could help us gather direct evidence against Tony and simultaneously protect other families from ongoing threats. She explained the plan in detail. I would pose as a family member willing to negotiate payment for Marcus's debts, wearing recording equipment, and meeting with Tony under FBI surveillance. The goal was to capture him admitting to extortion, money laundering, and threats against innocent family members. The risk is minimal, Detective Morrison assured me. We'll have agents positioned within 50 feet at all times, and you'll have multiple panic signals if anything goes wrong. But your participation could provide the evidence we need to ensure Tony receives a life sentence instead of just a few years. Dr. Walsh added a psychological perspective that helped me understand the broader impact. Families affected by this kind of systematic financial abuse often struggle with trust issues for years afterward. Successfully fighting back, seeing justice served, and knowing that other families are being protected can be essential for psychological healing. I thought about my nieces and nephews still having nightmares about the night they were abandoned at my house. I remembered my parents' faces when they realized how completely Marcus had manipulated their love and concern for their son. I considered Amanda's fear when strange men started calling her workplace, asking about loans she never heard of. I'll do it, I said. But I want guarantees that my family will be protected regardless of what happens during this operation. Agent Chen nodded. Your parents are already in a temporary relocation program. Your sister's family is under discreet surveillance, and Amanda is staying with relatives in another state until we complete the arrests. Everyone you care about is safely out of Tony's reach. Over the following week, FBI technicians taught me how to use miniaturized recording equipment and coached me on conversation techniques designed to elicit admissions of criminal activity. The plan required me to present myself as someone willing to pay Marcus's debts to protect my family, but also as someone who wouldn't be easily intimidated. Tony respects people who stand up to him, Agent Chen explained during one of our preparation sessions. He's used to dealing with desperate victims who beg and plead. If you approach him as an equal, someone handling a business transaction, he's more likely to speak openly about his operations. Dr. Walsh helped me understand the psychology of confronting someone who had threatened my family. You're going to feel anger, fear, and probably a desire for personal revenge. Those emotions are normal, but you'll need to channel them into controlled determination rather than reactive hostility. The night before the operation, I visited Marcus in federal detention. The brother I remembered, confident, charming, always quick with a joke, had been replaced by someone who looked older, thinner, and haunted by the consequences of his choices. "Phil, I know you have every right to hate me," Marcus said, his voice barely audible through the reinforced glass. "I destroyed everything good in our family because I was too proud and too scared to ask for help with my addiction." "The gambling was a disease," I replied, choosing my words carefully. "But recruiting other addicts, forging my identity, and putting children in danger? Those were choices you made to protect yourself at everyone else's expense." Marcus nodded, tears forming in his eyes. "Tomorrow when you face Tony, remember that he preys on weakness. He'll try to make you feel responsible for my mistakes or convince you that paying him is the only way to protect our family. Don't let him manipulate you the way he manipulated me." He leaned forward, pressing his palm against the glass. "I've given the FBI everything I know about his organization. Account numbers, names of other victims' locations where he keeps money and documents. I can't undo the harm I've caused, but maybe I can help make sure he never hurts another family." As I left the detention center, I felt a mixture of anger and sadness that would probably take years to fully process. But I also felt something else: determination to ensure that Tony's network would never again exploit vulnerable people the way they had exploited my brother and threatened my family. Agent Chen met me in the parking lot with final details for tomorrow's operation. "Tony has agreed to meet you at the Riverside Marina at 2 o'clock. He's expecting you to bring money, but we want you to focus on getting him to talk about his overall business and how he deals with families who can't pay. Remember," she added, "you're not just doing this for your family anymore. You're doing it for every family he's hurt and every family he might hurt in the future." The Riverside Marina parking lot felt surreal in the afternoon sunlight, with families loading boats and children playing near the water, while FBI agents positioned themselves invisibly throughout the area. I sat in my car checking the nearly invisible recording equipment one final time and reviewing the conversation guidelines Agent Chen had drilled into me. At precisely 2 o'clock, a black Cadillac Escalade pulled into the parking space directly beside mine. Tony Castellanos stepped out, and I was struck by how ordinary he appeared. A middle-aged man in business casual clothes who could have been anyone's uncle or neighbor. Only his cold, calculating eyes revealed the predator beneath the mundane exterior. "You must be Phil," he said, extending his hand as if we were meeting for a legitimate business appointment. "I appreciate you taking responsibility for your brother's poor choices." I shook his hand, maintaining eye contact, while fighting the urge to recoil from physical contact with someone who had threatened my family. Marcus made mistakes, but threatening innocent children crosses every line. Tony smiled, but the expression never reached his eyes. Children, elderly parents, girlfriends, they're all potential motivators when someone owes money they can't pay. Your brother understood that his choices affected everyone around him. We walked toward a picnic table overlooking the marina, and I noticed Tony's two associates positioning themselves at strategic points nearby. Agent Chen had warned me that Tony never traveled alone, and their presence confirmed that this was a significant meeting from his perspective. "Let's discuss terms," Tony said, settling onto the bench across from me. "Marcus owes $60,000 in principal plus accumulated interest and penalty fees. However, given the federal attention his situation has attracted, I'm willing to accept $40,000 as full settlement." "That's generous," I replied, hoping the sarcasm wasn't too obvious. "But I need to understand exactly what kind of business operation requires threatening families and forging documents." Tony's demeanor shifted slightly, becoming more businesslike, as he explained his perspective. "I provide financial services to people that traditional banks won't touch. Gambling addicts, People with poor credit, individuals facing immediate crises who need fast access to cash. The interest rates reflect the risk involved. And when people can't pay, I asked, keeping my voice steady. Everyone can pay, Tony said matter-of-factly. They might not have the money themselves, but they have relatives with jobs, homes they can mortgage, or valuables they can sell. My job is helping them understand their full range of options. I forced myself to remain calm as he casually described financial extortion as a legitimate business practice. What about families who genuinely can't access that kind of money? Tony's smile became genuinely predatory. Mr. Phil, everyone has something valuable. Your parents have a house worth $300,000. Your sister owns a business. Your girlfriend has a stable job and good credit. Marcus wasn't broke, he just wasn't thinking creatively about available resources. The recording equipment captured every word as Tony continued explaining his methods. Sometimes families need additional motivation to access their resources. A phone call to someone's workplace, a visit to their children's school, or documentation of their daily routines helps them understand that their problems affect everyone they care about. That sounds like stalking and intimidation, I said, pushing him to be more explicit. I prefer to call it thorough customer service, Tony replied. When someone borrows money from me, their entire support network becomes part of the repayment equation. Marcus understood this when he started referring other clients from his support group meetings. My stomach clenched as he confirmed that Marcus had actively recruited other gambling addicts. How many people did Marcus bring to your organization? Tony consulted his phone, scrolling through what appeared to be a contact list. 14 individuals over the past 8 months. Most of them are current clients still making regular payments. Marcus was quite effective at identifying people who were isolated and desperate enough to accept unfavorable terms. He looked up from his phone, studying my face carefully. Your brother also provided valuable intelligence about potential collateral, family members who could be leveraged if primary borrowers defaulted on their obligations. Collateral, I repeated, though I already understood his meaning. Kidnapping is such an ugly word, Tony said, his tone becoming conversational. I prefer to think of it as temporary relocation of family members until financial obligations are resolved. It's remarkably effective motivation, and in most cases, the actual relocation isn't necessary once families understand the seriousness of their situation. Agent Chen had warned me that Tony might reveal plans for kidnapping, but hearing him discuss it so casually made my blood run cold. Through my earpiece, I heard her voice. Keep him talking about specific operations and time frames. Were you planning to relocate members of my family? I asked, using his euphemistic language. Tony nodded as if discussing vacation plans. Your nephew Tommy seemed like an ideal candidate. 12 years old, walks home from school alone on Tuesdays and Thursdays, and his parents would certainly prioritize his safety over financial concerns. We had already surveilled his route and identified optimal intervention points. The casual mention of my nephew's name and specific details about his school schedule sent rage coursing through my system, but I forced myself to maintain composure. What about my parents? Elderly people are more fragile, Tony explained. Physical relocation creates medical risks that complicate operations. However, your parents' home security system has vulnerabilities that would allow for effective psychological pressure without actual removal. Every word he spoke dug his legal grave deeper, while simultaneously revealing the depth of planning that had gone into targeting my family. Agent Chen's voice in my earpiece confirmed that tactical units were moving into final positions. Mr. Phil, Tony said, checking his watch. I appreciate this civilized discussion, but I need your decision about payment. $40,000 transferred today, or we implement the alternative collection strategies we've discussed. I need one more piece of information, I said, knowing that Agent Chen wanted confirmation of the money laundering operation. Where exactly would I transfer this payment And how do you process large cash transactions without attracting federal attention? Tony's smile widened as he apparently interpreted my question as acceptance of his terms. I operate several legitimate businesses that facilitate money movement. Construction projects provide excellent opportunities for cash integration, and my check cashing locations handle transactions that traditional banks flag as suspicious. He pulled out a business card for Castellano Construction and Development. Official invoices for consulting services paid through business accounts, converted to cash through our retail locations, then deposited as construction revenue. The paper trail appears completely legitimate to casual examination. Agent Chen's voice crackled through my earpiece. That's enough. All units move in now. Within seconds, FBI agents emerged from concealment throughout the marina area, surrounding Tony and his associates, before any of them could react. Tony's face shifted from confident smugness to shocked disbelief as Agent Chen approached our table with her badge displayed. Tony Castellano, you're under arrest for extortion, money laundering conspiracy to commit kidnapping, and operating a continuing criminal enterprise. Agent Chen announced as other agents handcuffed Tony's associates. Tony stared at me with undisguised hatred as the reality of the situation became clear. You're wearing a wire, aren't you, Phil? Your brother didn't mention how clever his family could be. My brother's cooperation provided most of the evidence against your organization. I replied, standing up as Agent Chen took Tony into custody. This conversation just confirmed details we already knew. As federal agents led Tony away, Agent Chen reviewed the recorded conversation through her headphones. Perfect, she said with satisfaction. He admitted to extortion, described specific kidnapping plans, and explained his money laundering operation in detail. Combined with the evidence from your brother and today's raids, this should ensure lengthy prison sentences for everyone involved. Detective Morrison approached as the arrest scene wound down, carrying a folder thick with documentation. Mr. Phil, we executed search warrants on Tony's businesses while you were conducting this interview. The evidence we've recovered includes financial records, surveillance photos, and detailed files on over 100 families. The scope of Tony's network was even larger than anyone had imagined. Families across 3 states had been systematically exploited, threatened, and financially destroyed by an organization that operated like a parasite on human desperation and addiction. What happens to all those families now? I asked, thinking about people who might still be trapped in Tony's debt system. Agent Chen closed her notebook, looking exhausted but satisfied. Federal prosecutors are reviewing each case to determine which debts were illegally obtained through fraud or extortion. Many families will have their obligations canceled entirely, and others will receive assistance recovering money that was stolen from them. As we walked back toward the parking area, I felt a complex mixture of relief, exhaustion, and cautious hope. Tony's arrest wouldn't immediately heal the damage his organization had caused, but it represented the beginning of justice for dozens of families who had suffered in silence. Your family can start coming home tomorrow, Agent Chen said. Tony and his key associates are in federal custody, and we've frozen all their financial assets. The threat to your relatives has been permanently eliminated. 6 months after Tony's arrest, I stood in the community center auditorium, addressing an audience of families who had survived financial crimes similar to what my family endured. The federal prosecutions had concluded, with Tony receiving a 25-year sentence and his criminal network had been completely dismantled. When my brother's addiction and desperate choices destroyed our family's sense of security, I began looking out at faces that reflected understanding born from shared experience. I thought the damage might be permanent. But recovery is possible, and justice can be achieved when communities work together. My parents sat in the front row, their relationship with Marcus slowly healing through family counseling and his ongoing addiction treatment in federal prison. Mom had gained confidence in managing their finances independently, while Dad had become an advocate for elderly financial fraud prevention programs. The first lesson I learned, I continued, is that addiction doesn't just affect the person struggling with it. When someone we love becomes trapped in gambling, drugs, or alcohol, their desperation can put entire families at risk. But enabling destructive behavior by covering up consequences or providing money without accountability only makes the problem worse. Diana raised her hand from the middle section. She'd become a support group facilitator for families affected by financial crimes, helping other parents process the complex emotions that arise when relatives betray their trust. How do you rebuild trust when someone you love has lied and stolen from you? She asked, voicing a question that haunted many families in the audience. Trust is rebuilt through consistent actions over time, not through apologies or promises, I replied. Marcus is working to make amends by cooperating fully with ongoing investigations and participating in intensive addiction treatment. But trust will only be restored when his behavior demonstrates genuine change for an extended period. The recovery process had been more complex than anyone anticipated. Insurance helped restore my credit and recover most of the stolen money, but the psychological impact on family relationships required months of counseling and careful boundary setting. Amanda joined me on stage, representing another perspective on financial crime recovery. Partners and spouses often feel guilty about not recognizing signs of financial abuse, she said. I blamed myself for not noticing that someone was using Phil's identity to apply for loans and credit cards. But predators deliberately exploit trust and target people's natural inclination to believe their loved ones. She looked directly at a young woman in the third row whose husband had stolen her inheritance to pay gambling debts. Your worth as a person isn't measured by your ability to prevent someone else's criminal behavior. Healing means accepting that you were victimized, not that you were stupid or careless. Dr. Walsh, who had become a permanent consultant for our support network, addressed the audience next. Financial abuse creates trauma that affects entire family systems. Children who witness their parents being threatened or deceived may develop anxiety about money and security that persists into adulthood. Recovery requires acknowledging this trauma and providing appropriate support for every family member affected. Tommy, now 13 and more articulate about his experience, had volunteered to share his perspective with other children affected by similar crimes. I felt guilty for lying to help Marcus, even though I was just a kid who got tricked. Talking with other kids who went through similar things helped me understand that grown-ups who manipulate children are responsible for their bad choices, not the kids. The children present at that traumatic evening had all received counseling, but their resilience and insight consistently amazed the adults working with them. They had learned lessons about trust, honesty, and family loyalty that many adults never fully grasp. The second major lesson, I continued, is that financial predators deliberately target vulnerable communities. Tony's organization specifically recruited from addiction support groups, churches, and community centers because desperate people are more likely to accept unfavorable terms and less likely to report exploitation. Agent Chen, who attended as a representative of the FBI's Victim Services Program, added legal perspective. Federal prosecutions of financial exploitation networks have increased dramatically in recent years. But prevention requires community education and early intervention when families notice signs of financial manipulation. She distributed handouts listing warning signs of financial predator activity, family members requesting unusual amounts of money, sudden changes in financial behavior, unexplained knowledge of relatives' personal information, and pressure to make immediate financial decisions without consultation. The third lesson I learned, I said, is that recovery from financial crimes becomes meaningful when survivors help protect other families from similar exploitation. Every person in this room has knowledge and experience that could prevent another family from going through what we've endured. I gestured toward a display table where attendees could sign up for volunteer opportunities, teaching financial literacy classes, staffing hotlines for financial crime victims, advocating for stronger consumer protection laws, and mentoring families beginning their recovery process. Marcus's cooperation with federal investigators helped identify and shut down similar networks in 12 states, I explained. His information led to the recovery of over $2 million that had been stolen from families like ours. His addiction destroyed our trust, but his commitment to making amends is helping other families avoid the same devastation. Robert stood up from his seat near the back, representing the business perspective on financial crime prevention. Employers can play a crucial role in protecting families from financial predators. Companies that provide financial counseling, addiction support, and emergency assistance programs help employees avoid desperation that makes them vulnerable to exploitation. His construction company had implemented comprehensive employee assistance programs after learning how financial stress contributed to workplace accidents and productivity problems. Supporting our employees' financial stability isn't just compassionate, it's good business that strengthens entire communities. As the presentation concluded, I shared contact information for the nonprofit organization Amanda and I had established, Families Fighting Financial Fraud. We provide direct assistance to families recovering from financial crimes, advocate for stronger prosecution of financial predators, and work with law enforcement to identify and shut down criminal networks. The organization had already helped 43 families navigate the complex process of financial recovery, working with banks, credit agencies, and law enforcement to restore stolen money and repair damaged credit histories. Our mission is simple, Amanda explained. No family should suffer alone when they become victims of financial crime. Recovery is possible, justice can be achieved, and communities become stronger when we support each other through difficult times. During the question and answer session, an elderly man asked about protecting senior citizens from financial exploitation. His concern reflected a growing awareness that aging populations face particular vulnerability to sophisticated fraud schemes. Education and communication are the best protection, I replied. Families that discuss financial matters openly establish clear boundaries about money decisions and maintain regular contact are much less likely to fall victim to financial predators. Dr. Walsh added clinical insight. Isolation makes people vulnerable to financial manipulation. Senior citizens who maintain active social connections, participate in community activities, and have regular contact with family members report fewer attempts at financial exploitation. As the evening ended, families approached our registration table to volunteer, share their stories, and connect with others who understood their experiences. The room buzzed with conversations about healing prevention and community support. The most important lesson I've learned, I concluded addressing the lingering crowd, is that surviving financial crime isn't just about recovering money or seeing criminals punished. It's about rebuilding trust, strengthening families, and creating communities where vulnerable people are protected rather than exploited. Marcus had written a letter that I read aloud as our final message. My addiction led me to make choices that hurt innocent people, especially my own family. I can't undo that harm, but I can dedicate my life to ensuring that other families don't suffer because of financial predators, like the ones who exploited my desperation. Recovery isn't just about stopping harmful behavior, it's about using your experience to protect others from making the same mistakes. 6 months later, our nonprofit had expanded to serve families in 15 states. Marcus had completed his first year of intensive addiction treatment while serving his federal sentence, and our family gatherings had resumed with appropriate boundaries and open communication about financial matters. The children who were traumatized that night at my house now attended monthly family dinners, where they felt safe, loved, and protected. My parents had developed confidence in managing their finances independently and volunteered to teach financial literacy classes at their senior center. Most importantly, we had learned that families can survive even devastating betrayal when they commit to healing together, supporting each other's recovery, and transforming painful experiences into meaningful service to their communities. Have you or someone you know ever experienced financial manipulation or fraud by a family member? How do you think families can better protect themselves from financial predators who exploit addiction and desperation? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. Your insights might help other families recognize warning signs and seek help before criminals destroy their security and trust. If this story resonated with you, please like this video to help other families find information about financial crime prevention and recovery. Subscribe to our channel for more stories about overcoming family crises and building stronger communities. Share this video with anyone who might benefit from understanding how financial predators operate and how families can fight back against exploitation. Thank you for listening to my story and for supporting families who are working to rebuild their lives after financial crime. Remember that recovery is possible. Justice can be achieved, and no family has to face these challenges alone. Together, we can create communities where vulnerable people are protected, and criminals who exploit addiction and desperation face the consequences of their choices.